Hello, thanks for downloading this episode of Discussing Documentaries. This one's slightly different. For a start, I couldn't get the bloody theme tune to work. I really couldn't. And the reason why is this one is a director's interview, and we also speak to one of the stars of the documentary, and we recorded it on Skype, and that's got a different megahertz apparently, and the megahertz are really, really, really important. For the life of me, I couldn't get the theme tune to not play like it was on a Benny Hill loop, so I've just left it out. And you've got me. We speak to Matthew and Barnaby O'Connor in this episode, as well as Minnie Lane, and me and Rick really geek out here. Just understanding how a documentary gets made, the pain they have to go through. The people who made this are intelligent, funny, empathetic. Is that right? Is that the right word? It is now, because I'm not going to record this intro again. And they're just really nice. We really, really enjoyed speaking. We spoke for hours, and I've tried to cut out some of the waffle. But yeah, it was really great. So enjoy it, and see you on the next one. Thanks for supporting it. Really, yeah, it's really uplifting. Have a great day. Ta-da. All right, let's just have a laugh then. Hey, quickly, Barnaby, can we just do the British thing? What's the weather like where you are, sir?
Sunshine, 28 degrees. I'm sweltering like this. Like, oh my God.
Rick, why don't, as always, mate, why don't you kick us off?
First off, really enjoyed the documentary. Just as a baseline to start off, when did you start the idea? When was the inception to look into the world of the pickup artists? Would we call them?
Yeah. Okay. So we started in 2014, and we finished the final edit in 2018. So it was about 4 years from the very first interviews to finishing the film. That wasn't working on it full time, obviously. We did about 2.5, 3 years of interviews and going out and meeting people and recording material. And then we had 1.5 years of working solidly on the edit to put the documentary together.
I think it's really well put together. It does stand out on that.
Yeah.
And one of the first things you see is you guys are in these seminars that the people go to, which the first time I saw that, it really looks like sort of like incel Scientology inside from the documentaries I've seen. And they are just absolutely cram-packed. So I take it this is hidden camera footage you guys had to sneak in there to get that, or did they know you were filming?
No, they knew we were filming. I think one of the biggest things that happened over the course of making the documentary is because we started in 2014. This was so Me Too as a movement, and Time's Up is more recent, but Me Too as a movement has actually been around for quite a long time. I'm sure, just in case people don't know that, but it only really came to kind of the forefront of the discussion and the conversation in 2016/2017. So when we started, it wasn't. I don't think people were much less cautious about the kind of things they said around that sort of topic, and so we were there. I mean, we had huge, great big broadcast quality cameras. I mean, it was pretty obvious what we were doing.
I see. I was picturing like a massive suitcase with a hole in it, like The Simpsons.
Well, I don't know how, if anyone noticed that during the documentary, the bits that we actually filmed of the seminars are not actually the full seminar itself. So that's just a warm up to the actual seminar. And basically anyone that comes in as a student or a participant gets frisked. They have to sign their mobile in. They have to take everything out of their pockets so that the content is not recorded. So most of the actual seminar footage is the warm-up. It's not actually the nuts and bolts of what they actually get into.
Yeah.
I get you. There was that guy, I want to say, was it Baxter?
Yeah.
Was the English one? For me, it was when he got them to do the Spartan war cry. I just found As someone who's done stand up for years, that just felt like the laziest crowd work I've ever seen. You just went out and went, I watched Infinity War last night. I want us to chant for Thanos, and we're all going to bond.
Well,
I've seen that on I was in corporate like investment banking and law for years, and I've done plenty of training courses, and the training courses all feel like that. It has a very corporate training feel to it. Did you get that impression from attending them as well? And Minnie, I guess you were involved on the actual side of it. Was it, in your experience, was it based on the corporate training that you'd attended?
So it was a really long time ago that I was in the pickup industry. We're talking 14 years ago now. But yeah, I did attend, I think, 2 of those seminars, and the atmosphere is very strange. But I think the thing is that a lot of the guys there, they're just decent guys that just want a little bit of help. It's not malicious in the way that I imagined when I first was invited down to one of those seminars. I was actually quite surprised.
I think this is why it's so important. This is why I like having Minnie included on these conversations, because she can talk about this kind of thing of, not everyone that gets into pickup is doing it for bad reasons. I mean, in terms of from the student's point of view, so yeah, I think that's a good point.
Well, one of my comedy partners who I run shows with in the Edinburgh Festival, he is painfully shy around women, and I've worked with him for 6 years or so, to the point that he'd met my partner for years. It took him 2 years to be able to speak to her, and we'd go out drinking and stuff together. He wouldn't say a word. He attended these type of events to help him gain confidence. And I was wondering, did you show, because that it changed him when he went to these things, I think in a positive way, to the point that he's now with a lady and they've just had a child together, and he has a really meaningful, beautiful relationship. And like me, his missus and my missus, we all go out together now, and he's just a lot more relaxed because he has this meaningful relationship. And I'm just, in your documentary, I was waiting to see a positive side of things so it could represent my mate, and I didn't see that. And did you experience that when you made the film?
Oh, you know what? I would say yes, man. I would say yes. There was, I can't remember the name of the company, but there was one instructor who was coaching a guy that was blind. And it was to do with how he got over his disability and kind of came out of himself and was actually able to kind of, live should we say, a slightly more normal dating life by having the confidence in himself to, just go out and chat regardless of his disability. So we did see 1 or 2 positive sides. But I think the thing is that when you look at any documentary, you could say that the pickup game would have benefited from, should we say, a serialized version, because there's so much to each aspect of the business, dating, life coaching, that we could have delved into. But, we had hour and a half, lots of kind of detailed stuff to get through. We kind of had to sort of rush a little bit over that.
I think he's got a really good scope over the time of where it began from, with the initial books and then the online inception. Even just seeing how old the internet looked on that was fantastic footage. And then who was it? It was the 5 guys who went and stayed in the same house with Courtney Love.
Yeah.
Which I think Strauss was one of those. If Neil Strauss, that was all insane. Like that, like when you say serialized, that could have been its own episode, I imagine. Just those guys' stories nuggeted down. But is there anyone you met that you just thought was remarkably different off camera? Because some of those like the heads of the company types, or the coaches, sorry, just seem insane within the footage that we see. Like Justin Wayne or Mystery would come to mind.
I think, I mean, if I can, this is a really difficult. Well, you guys are asking very difficult questions, which is good, and I'm going to try and answer them candidly. I think the documentary is supposed to be a cautionary tale. It's not a moralizing tale. It's not a documentary that says that, you know, like casual relationships are bad or having one night stands are bad, or I have no issue with any of that. I really don't have a issue either with people trying to talk to someone in a nightclub or a bar, or I mean, I don't think any of us do, as long as the intention is good. Yeah. I think the problem is the pickup lifestyle is very addictive, and it can quite easily become, for a certain type of person, it can quite easily become all consuming. And some of the roads that you can go down, and some of there are sort of dangerous holes that you can fall into if you're not careful. And I think that's what the documentary is trying to comment on. Are all of the students bad? With some of the more, it really depends on the advice that you're getting. And also, I think what's really difficult is, I think some of the instructors, okay, Justin Wayne is extreme, and it's very easy to sort of, you know, and I remember filming Justin and saying, look, if we include this stuff, people are going to go crazy. Just to let you know, like, I don't want you to make this documentary and then people to react badly to it, and you say, well, you screwed us over, because I'm telling you now, people are not going to react well to this. And I think Justin is a very clear example. I have very strong feelings about his behavior. With some of the other instructors, and I think Minnie could talk about this as well, some of them are misguided, or maybe they haven't quite grown up, or maybe it doesn't all come from a place of maliciousness. Some of it comes from like naivety or not understanding. They don't even understand what they're doing is not really beneficial in the long term.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to really get across how complex it all is, and I think what you just said about how certain types of characters get swept down this negative path is really key, because for me, one of the main problems, well, there's two massive problems. One of them is that a lot of the instructors, maybe all of the instructors, just don't actually fully understand the extent of what they're doing. And another one is that there's this sort of one-size-fits-all approach to dating. And you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach to something where you're dealing with the inside of people's minds and their behavior, because everybody has different conditioning. And so your friend, some people do come out of this and they do have a positive experience. And as I said, not all bad. If you're somebody who's overcautious, for example, and you're stuck in your head and you're not taking any action because you're racked with fear about things that you don't need to worry about, if you come on one of these courses, you may well come out much better from it, because a lot of the emphasis is on, like, take action, stop thinking. And so somebody like your friend might get swept into that, be forced to take action on a few things and actually come out with greater confidence. However, if you get somebody who's got a lot of anger and inner hatred towards women, say they've had an abused mother and they're harboring all of this anger, and they don't really give a shit about women, and then you tell them stop thinking and take action, and they're already not really caring about the women's perspective, then that's horrendous advice to stop thinking and take. You need to think more. You need to be more considerate of what damage you might be doing and what the other person's experience is going to be. And so you get this boot camp full of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people, and you're saying, right, what you need to do is this. And you just can't teach like that. I teach one-on-one for a reason, because I have to spend at least an hour listening to the person's individual story and their individual problems. It's like, in the same way you can't go to one size fits all talking therapy. You can't go and have a therapist, because one person's dealing with anger, another person's dealing with anxiety, another person's dealing with shame. There is no size fits all approach. And for me, that's the massive problem with these seminars, is it's taught as if it
okay.
is. And a lot of the this worked for me, therefore that's what you need to do.
Okay. And Minnie, if
it's
you're
not
happy,
the
we'd
case.
like to, because one of my questions is, where do people like my friend, where can they go if they don't want to go to a pickup style school? So are you happy for us to put like your details in the show notes of your website and how they can contact you if, you know, our listenership, we're not in the thousands yet, but
Of course.
this is kind of evergreen content, so it's going to be around there for a number of years. And if you're all right with that, we'll also include the links to the film, etc. as well. Sorry, Barnaby, I beg your pardon. Go on.
I think I'd quite like to add something to what Minnie was saying, and I think it's quite a good segue, is that what you've got is you've got a dating industry. So predominantly it's based around, for many people, money. And so I think what ends up happening with a large proportion of the companies is, instead of like Minnie's approach, where you take an individual and you work with that one individual, it's let's throw the net out as wide as possible and try and get as much money as possible. And I think what happens especially in the sort of the slightly shadier side of the pickup industry, is they have a formula. That formula they have refined over a number of years, applying lots of different psychological tricks and traits. And basically they try to do a one size fits all for everybody. And I think the thing is depending which company you go to depends on whether or not you get that personal touch, or whether the companies are effectively looking at the students as a dollar bill. And I think when that happens, and it's 100% success guaranteed, I mean, how do you guarantee 100% success with any woman that you want? Yeah. It's impossible. And then that's where you start getting down to this sort of slightly darker side. There was quite a number of sections of the documentary that we had to cut out, where Minnie explains, look, it's about yourself, it's about being honest, it's about how you approach your life, and in turn how that kind of replicates externally and other people see you. And I think when we look at the industry or the documentary, we're looking also at, okay, well, what happens when it becomes about the money and not actually about helping others and that emotional kind of side of things. So I think that's quite a good sort of differentiator between the decent companies and maybe the ones to be slightly wary of.
Yeah, the money can strip away some of the integrity and good intentions.
Yeah, money, sex, power.
Yeah,
the
trifecta.
It's been there forever, you know.
It's intoxicating. That's the thing. You go on a few pickup courses, you learn, and then you're going out and you've got a group of people now that you've sort of bonded with, you've made friends.
Yeah.
You're even I think if you're not necessarily kind of taking people home, you're kind of chatting and that is quite an addictive, that feels very empowering, you know, to a student who's never, which I understand. The problem is it's quite easy for that to become an obsessive lifestyle. I mean, some of the students, is literally what they talked about was pickup, because that's how they know each other, that's how they relate to each other.
Yes.
Secret club.
That's their hobby. There's no other conversation sometimes between them. I'm sure they have other conversations outside of that. But I think I mean, if I could just sort of, this podcast, I think is because the documentary is really like a starting point, and I think it's conversations like this that actually, from the point of view of us as kind of film, it's very good to say, well, you know, that's an interesting point, like you were saying about your friend, and you know, you can't cover it all in an hour and a half.
No.
So this is a good kind of platform or opportunity for us to sort of say, well, you know, to broaden the conversation a little bit.
What were you hoping to achieve? Sorry, with the message you're putting out there, is it one of education and, you know, women are not commodities to be treated as such by men, and, you know, don't get sucked into an insane pyramid scheme, which some of it seemed like.
I think there's a lot of messages. I think there's a lot of things that we were trying to say. I think the first one was kind of raising awareness of, okay, these are the kind of things that go on. These are the kind of tactics that pickup industry uses and pickup subculture uses. So from the point of view of women that might be on the other end of it, but also we wanted to kind of say to the guys, look, do you understand do you fully understand what you're buying into here?
Yeah.
These are the risks, these are the potential pitfalls that might come up. And I think also, and this is really what was so important about Minnie's contribution, is this idea of honesty. Because like, well, if not pick up, you know, what can I do? If I can't do this, what can I do? If I can't learn some lines and some routines and I think that maybe Minnie can talk about this in a bit more detail, but I think there's tremendous power in honesty with people. And it's actually quite attractive, is the kind of irony of it. And when you spend so much time around people that have crafted an image for themselves, you see the cost, you see like the psychological cost of constantly trying to maintain an ideal that doesn't exist. You know, the people pay the pickup instructors because they want to be like them. They want that lifestyle. I don't know if Minnie has anything else to.
Yeah, well, what we're really about is the human condition and the problem that we all have, which is that we struggle to recognize the difference between self-development and ego development. And so, and the trainers don't understand this either. They don't realize that they're actually feeding their egos. So I think that it is also a warning to the instructors to point out the difference and to say, look, it can go down this awful path if you're not aware of it. But also, just for it's a really difficult thing to explain, the difference between ego development and the self-development, to explain that briefly now. But as an instructor, really, it's my job. If a client comes to me and says, this is what I want, and say they want power and glory, they want 1 million women's numbers, they want, you know, to he's having sex with a different person every night. It's my job as an instructor to recognize the difference between what they want and what they need,
right? And
to not feed them to help them get what they want, to recognize that they might be going on a destructive path, and to question what's beneath it,
right?
Like, you know, ultimately you might say, oh, you know, I want to be a multi-millionaire, but then if you really dig down, you might find that what you really want is the respect of your father, or something like that. So it's my job as a coach to not just take at face value what somebody's saying they want me to help them get. It's for me to help them understand if that's really going to get them what they ultimately want. Is it really, you know, what do they think they're going to get if they get all these women? Do they think that they're going to be happy? Do they think that they're going to be fulfilled? Is that what they really want? And then to help them understand, you know, you're not actually going to get fulfillment from this. And I think the documentary does a really good job of that, of saying, look, it's sold as the dream and it does seem like the dream, but look at the end. Look at the end of this. Look at Ross Jeffrey.
Yeah, he was the cat guy, wasn't he?
Oh, don't give away the surprise ending. I felt come on, that's the money shot at the end.
Don't spoiler.
I when he was watching it and he heard it, because you could even be the daughter who was talking to a cat, and 100% I went, that's going to be a cat. And I loved that you did it during the credits. I loved that you put it there. That was just such a nice little touch for me.
I thought that was beautiful. I like this almost the story arc of sadness that came in on the people involved in the industry. It's like because it just didn't. They didn't seem to have emotionally fulfilled lives. And you almost not I think pity is the wrong word, but you felt for them, right? Because they seem to have, there was an emptiness that was just, it was a bit heartbreaking. I think that's what I felt. I felt heartbroken for the people involved in it.
Yeah, they don't have, and you really just can't be happy and fulfilled if you don't have love in your life.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, we love Jeffrey's ending up with 3 cats that he adores, but actually he has found love. And that's great, and I'm really happy for him that he's found love. But it is an illustration of the fact that these men are not people who are really talented at building connections with women. They're not. They're so bad at building connections with women that they've had to learn how to have a physical connection without actually having a love connection, without actually having any of the nutritious benefits of having close relationships with others. And so actually, as Ross Jeffries has progressed in life and found closer to truth, he actually has managed to form genuine connections only with animals so far, it looks like, but still that's a step on from when he was sleeping with them, and he himself recognized the difference, that he's actually much happier now that he's love through his relationships with animals than he was when he was having sex with a different woman every night.
And I thought that came across really well in the feature length, because it's just like a wise guy talking about what he wishes he could have said. And you see the footage of him, and I want to say it's kind of like not a Jeremy Kyle, but a Trisha American talk show. And just seeing that in its own microcosm of that time was just fascinating, when he's yelling at the crowd and to who he is now. But I also think, who was that? I don't want to get his name wrong. Phil Yaka, I think it was the one you did the podcast with me.
Paul Janka.
Paul Janka, yeah. Him talking about what he realized and seeing the growth in him was just an excellent interview. Which it's almost like these young guys with the top knots and the fancy shirts doing all these speeches. You can see that's them in 10 years if they're lucky. Like, if things go right, they will have that level of, clarity compared to what they're currently in. But those are very excellently put down.
Have you guys seen Magnolia with Tom Cruise?
Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson film. Yeah,
so
film.
Ross Jeffries is credited as the inspiration for his character.
There's a great line that the Tom Cruise character says in that, when he's being interviewed and he got hit with a difficult question and he didn't say anything, and he just looked at the interviewee, and she said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm silently judging you." And that summed up how he perceives people. They are his playthings. They are to be manipulated for his own ends. And and again, even in that film, his story arc of his, eventual blossoming slightly as he can release some emotions and be real. Again, that's quite nice. And I think that's what you got across in the documentary. Because when I explained the documentary to my partner, she really went for the negatives, and I went, actually, no, I don't think this documentary, although it's a tough watch, it's like, especially as you progress through it, but it's not a miserable watch, right? It's a good documentary to watch. And I Rick, did you learn a lot watching this? Because there was lots of that. I was like, that's a thing. Oh wow, okay.
I learned more about the scale of the industry. I think that's very good to shed light on. Like you say, this is just such a cash cow in the almost an underground groundswell. I thought I couldn't quite put an age to it, but I think it's interesting. Like, what's the general age range of this catchment that these people flock to? Is it like, say, 18 to 25-year-olds, or is it a little bit more older than you think?
It goes way up. I've taught people in their 70s.
Wow.
Wow.
It really does cover all age ranges.
If I'm ever in an old folks home and I hear someone getting negged, I'll just
Well,
can I just go back to the Ross Jeffries thing, because without meaning to spoil the ending, this is difficult. I mean, how do I explain this? I never wanted, as a documentary maker, this is a very, very difficult thing, because you get to know people when you spend time with them and when you interview them. And then, of course, with the ending, I'm aware, as you know, we're aware of how that makes Ross look. And there is kind of that is an uncomfortable sensation in some ways, because I don't actually like making fun of people. I don't like being made fun of myself. It's a really, excuse me, it's a really, really hard, difficult, hard line to walk. I mean, somebody said to me once, the other thing is, he asked us to film the cats. That wasn't something that was taken on the sly. We went to do the, isn't it strange? We went to interview him about something else, and then we'd finished, and then he said, "Oh, here, meet Pernilla and Tazzleberry. Can you film me with them, please? And can you make, I'd appreciate it if it ends up in the documentary."
But I can understand what you mean. I remember when we watched the Jinx, you had, if you haven't, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but he's basically interviewed a guy who he's found the evidence that's murdered his wife, but he's been around this guy for 2 years interviewing him. He's like, I actually like Bob. I feel bad that I'm now going to show him this letter that clearly shows that he's killed his best friend. So I like, especially on a level where you're not even dealing with someone of that level, I can imagine, yeah, that's a tough line to walk, and how you would cringe at us just laughing at that, going, "Oh, if he's listening to this, I wouldn't want him to think that I think less of him." So I can appreciate that.
And how did you handle that in the editing process? So the pair of you, it was, so you've got the emotional connections with these human beings who you've got to know, and then there is a part of it, I know, and you're not making fun of them. I completely get that, but there is a part you've got to show the underbelly of them. You've got to show their, some of their bad traits. How do you balance that out with the emotions you feel for them as human beings? Because the people you see, they're going to have good qualities as well, aren't they? They must have.
Well, we're all human beings. I mean, if I can answer this quickly, and then maybe Barnaby can put his take on it. It's very difficult because there is an element of guilt, and there's an element of, it depends. With someone like Justin, it's very simple, because I explained to Justin is well aware of the reaction that people are going to have. What's much harder is when people have a narrative of who they are in their own mind, and that doesn't match up to what their behavior actually is. So they think they're, superstar pickup instructors helping loads of people, and it's like, well, actually, you're also damaging and exploiting people at the same time. We all like to think we're good people. Maybe they don't. It's difficult because you see the humanity in people, and we are ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. So that is a tough line to walk. I mean, there's a friend of mine who said that your responsibility is to the audience, not to the people in the documentary. So that's kind of how I reconcile it, but it's not easy. I mean, I'll be honest. Yeah. It's something that I kind of struggle with. It'd be much easier if we were making documentaries about puppies and cute animals.
To be fair, on the subject of that final shot of the cats, it's not the worst light anyone's shown in that documentary. I mean, that's almost like a joyful upswing at the end after the darkness at the 3/4 mark. Which, sorry, Barnaby. We said if you have your own take on Matthew's point there. Sorry, see, what I'm doing is I'm switching between screens because I can't get you all on the same one, so I keep having to flick back. I feel like I'm not trying to ignore you. I just know you're living a way better life than me out there than I am in Newcastle, and I'm way happier looking at those two wallpapers than yours right now.
Well, I moved house over the weekend, so the house is an absolute disaster, so I'm throwing stuff up in the background just in case we're using some video footage. I'm probably going to abstain from answering that question in how I probably would do, because I'm not 100% certain how that will come across. I think one of the points that I would make is in the third sort of quarter of the documentary, there is quite a harrowing tale that is told. Now, the thing is that as kind of Matt mentioned earlier, we've never gone out purposefully to, make anyone look stupid or edit things in a particular way that makes you question their kind of integrity. But I think as kind of documentary filmmakers, what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring the truth to the forefront. And like with that story in the kind of the end part of the documentary, you have a victim that had a really bad experience, and you had 3 people that were instrumental in that bad experience. So looking at the edit and the questions of how do you feel recounting these people's stories, I question my own morality of okay, the people that actually were guilty of quite a serious assault, they have their own lives too. They have their own parents, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunties, whatever. Maybe they're not all bad apples. Maybe there is a good side to them, but the reality of that situation is they did something really really bad, and you have to kind of call them out on it using as close to the truth and the facts as possible. I would, if I was related to them, I would be devastated
Yeah.
to see that footage and to, you know, to sort of, should we say, bring up the past again, because I'm sure for a lot of these people, you're trying to move on, you're trying to better yourself, and you've paid your debt to society, and hopefully, you know, you will continue to be a decent, upstanding human being. But it's quite a difficult, that for me is more difficult than looking at an instructor who says, okay, I've just got 3 girls to tattoo my name on them, and I'm gonna introduce them all. I think that's a very different
and that's the complexities of the
question.
Human relationship,
So,
isn't it? That's
it is really difficult to balance that in your own mind. And I'm sure, you know, with photographers and in war zones and seeing all manner of carnage, it is quite difficult. And how do you balance that in your own mind? And the simplest answer is we try and stick as close to the truth as is possible, without deliberately, you know, painting somebody in a light that isn't really factual at that moment in time.
Thanks, Barnaby. And when you had the idea for the film, did you already have that part that we were just talking about in mind as well? So did you have, when the idea came to you, or did it develop over time when you're like, oh, this, as you got into the belly of the beast, you were like, oh, this is horrific. Look what we're learning here. Or what initially sparked the idea? Where did that come from?
Okay, so that is something that developed with time. I don't think we started out. And also, I mean, I just want to say that in talking about, just referencing what Barnaby was talking about, there was also, you know, to include something like that, which is obviously a very serious accusation against the pickup industry, that we wouldn't have included something like that if we felt that that was just a one-off isolated incident, or that kind of thing never happened elsewhere. It was like there was a sense of, okay, this is quite, I can't really go into that in too much detail, but there was sort of things that maybe you saw, or there were behaviors that you saw that you thought, okay, I can see how this could get people in real trouble. Even if I didn't witness them getting in trouble themselves, I know the attitude that they have. So that's why that's in there, because I think it's important to kind of highlight that side of things. But to go back to the original question, it was something that I was filming a music video, and there was an actress in it who was a conversation girl for one of the pickup companies. So basically what they do is during the daytime seminars, they'd kind of teach the students, okay, these are conversation gambits, and these are lines, and this is how to keep conversation going. And then the students would go and practice on her, and she would give them feedback and say, okay, well, you came across well, or that was kind of clumsy, or and she was actually the first person that we interviewed as part of the documentary. And then essentially we just fell down the rabbit hole, and we just started writing to people, and so the whole documentary was really a process of discovery over the course of the 4 years that we made it.
And sorry to ask another horrible question. How many times did you want to quit when you were making it, because you were like, this is terrible, I'm not enjoying this? Because bits of it are, you see a real horrible side of men. Were there any, let me reframe that question. Were there any moments where you wanted to quit because it was making you feel so horrible when you were making it?
I can answer that one. I'll give you a brief answer.
Moving to Italy. We need space.
Yeah, that's it. So I think the thing is, when editing, I don't know how many of the listeners or people kind of have experience of editing. It is a very repetitive pastime. You go over the same scene, the same footage for years and years and years. And in the past, we've created or edited or directed dodgy independent films. And I can still to this day recount word for word the script, because you just see it so often that you know which bit comes in and so forth. So sifting through hours and hours and hours of behind the scenes footage in the seminars, the freebie giveaways, it was quite a depressing experience, because you're just like, oh shit, not again. I'm tired of listening to this mantra of, conquer, you're the prize, do this, do that. It is quite a depressing after a while kind of experience. But I think we were more planning to quit on creative differences rather than content. Because we have been known to have the occasional powwow.
I don't think I could do anything that long with that, brother.
No. Can I, two things. I think, first of all, one of the things that happens is
don't
when
get
you're
yourself
around
out of
that every
it.
day, you become desensitized to it. And I remember the world premiere that we had at Hot Docs, and it was myself, Minnie, Barnaby were there, and it's out when you looking at it fresh now. Some of it is really outrageous and very shocking. And I remember a few people walked out like